We are licensed therapists, but we probably aren't your therapist. While we may share helpful information about mental health, it is best to form your individual care plan with your own mental health professional. If we are your therapist, hi. While this podcast shares nuggets of wisdom about mental health, we are sharing many pieces of who we are outside of the therapy room and doing a lot of yapping about nonsense, our own healing work, and some about sex and dating. If you feel listening to this podcast may interfere with your work in therapy, please refrain from doing so. While we're on the subject, any notes from our dating lives have been changed to protect the privacy of our partners and ourselves. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Healing Journey podcast. I'm Elise Kennedy.
And I'm Lindsay Camp.
And this is the podcast where two therapist besties talk about their healing journeys, interview healers who have helped along the way, and others on their healing journeys. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, Elise. How are you, my friend?
Oh, pretty good. I'm excited to talk about hacks, and I don't mean the new season coming back, but I'm very excited. I saw some memes today of the new hack season, and it looks hilarious.
Oh, I did too. I want to say that I saw, what's our gal's name? What's her name? Anyways, a stripper was in her face, I believe.
A stripper was in her face. Absolutely. But we are going to be talking about our hacks for when you're in the midst of grief, but I feel like these can also work for ADHD.
Absolutely, which makes sense because we're ADHD girlies. I'm undiagnosed, but I think it's pretty clear.
Probably. And grief girlies.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that we can go back and forth. I know that we each kind of prepped a list, and I was thinking we could go back and forth.
I think that there are different stages of grief, and in the stages of grief, there will be different hacks that are necessary. I noticed that in my first stage of grief, I was extremely dissociated. I remember I was in an IFS training and I didn't take in anything, really. Mm-hmm. I was so dissociated. Nothing was coming through. I was having a very hard time doing the practice sessions, and usually I can put it on for a training, but I could not. Mm-hmm. So my first hack would be, don't try to take in complex information when you're in the initial stages of grief, and don't waste your money on a training. Lesson learned. I could barely read an email. I can't believe that you were getting yourself to a training. It was virtual. So I was actually doing it from bed, which, good point. That's another great hack. Be in bed anytime you can. Mm-hmm. If you can do a training from bed and position your camera so nobody can tell you're in bed, or even just be in bed and give no fucks. I think there were periods of time where I was in bed without the camera view trying to hide that I was in bed. I was laying down doing my practice sessions. As we've talked about before, maybe actually we haven't talked about this, but Queen icon legend Kacey Musgraves recorded an entire album in bed. So my second hack, which I'm sorry for not going back and forth, but it was an offshoot, lay down at all times and do anything you can possibly from your bed.
You know that I was getting horizontal at all times.
Gotta be.
Okay.
Okay, what's yours?
Mine is this one's for the early stages too. And what I'm about to say is likely not good for the environment, for your body. But in the thick of it, baby wipes, makeup remover wipes, dry shampoo, mouthwash. That's all I'll say about that.
Do you want to say any more?
No.
Do you think? Do you think they get it?
I think they get it.
Okay.
I think they get it. Okay. Yeah.
We'll leave it there.
It's hard to get in the shower when you're horizontal
Which brings us to my next hack.
You're welcome.
Which is baths. Now, baths are not just a hack, but it is a way to stay horizontal. Baths are my self-care regimen. I know I've talked about it before. I'll say it again. And again, baths are not good for the environment either, so we'll name that. But they are great for your body. They are great for staying horizontal. They are great for regulating your nervous system. And it's an incredible ritual to have. Now, if you want to go all out and really do it as a hack versus the self-care, you can get one of those wooden stretchy things that you can put on the bath. You can have your computer there. You can do your reading. You can really do anything you need in the bath. And you can certainly take a bath instead of a shower. So if you want to go a step further than just the baby wipes and dry shampoo, get yourself to the bath and linger. Stay in the bath for a long time.
I'm going to move us off of the horizontal theme unless you have anything else in the horizontal space.
I'm not loving the idea of standing up, but let's rise.
Let's rise. Well, I was also kind of baiting you a little bit with a joke there about in our divorce grief, there's also been some horizontal healing that's happened. You're not biting on that, are you?
I don't get it. Do you mean sexual?
Yes.
Keep this in. Yes, some horizontal healing may or may not have occurred. I'm embarrassed. Some horizontal healing may or may not have occurred. Thank you.
Plenty.
Thank you for bringing it to the public sphere.
Absolutely. Okay, so something that I have really leaned on in my grief around my mom's death is growing and nourishing and nurturing things. So I've been doing a lot of yard work. I've been doing a lot of gardening, and I also have done chickens, starting from baby chicks. And every single day, there's something different and new about a garden and about chickens. Like just yesterday, my little chicks started to get their tail feathers, and it was so exciting. And I've got little bitty sprouts popping up in the garden bed, and it truly fills me with so much delight, especially in the morning. Like whenever I'm going to let my dogs out, I do a quick check on everything, and it just makes me smile, and I get so elated to see new growth and to see things changing. And there's so much wrapped up in that. I also really love like doubling up, like bang for your buck on these hacks. And so being outside, being with nature, moving my body, all of that just really works for me in my grief.
I was just talking to a client earlier today about how powerful our relationship with plants are. I think there are a few levels that plants and nature are really helpful. I think that it hits on a spiritual level. And in thinking about it as a hack for moving through grief, there's the moving your body piece, but it also energizes you. And I found that just like a plant, sometimes I need to sit outside in the sun to get my work done. Or what I started doing was sitting outside in the mornings as I could to have my coffee, and sometimes I would listen to music or whatever it would be, but I would also listen to what I call the song of the trees. And just listening to the breeze go through the trees is so grounding. And just take your laptop out and let the sun energize you and listen to the natural soundtrack around you.
I guess we're not done with horizontal because hammocks have also been a big part of our healing.
Now, if I'm doing work, usually I'm sitting upright on the outdoor sofa.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get the work done laying down in the hammock, but I do get in the hammock.
I figured out a propped up situation with my hammock where I can, because it's hard when you're fully reclined.
Absolutely.
I'm really making it work out there.
Making it work.
Okay. What do you have to follow my growing things?
So something that was really important to me was building a social calendar, and that helped to energize me for getting my work done as well. When I have more in my calendar, then I only have certain times that I can get things done. So it would help me know, okay, I'm going to dinner with this friend. So that's, first of all, not isolating myself. It's being with people. And that's very energizing for me. Or I'm going to this concert or whatever it may be. And having my calendar so that I wasn't alone was really important to me in the beginning. I am what I call kind of an extroverted introvert, I think. So I really thrive on my alone time, but I also really love being around people and I can put it on. And so making sure I was spending a lot of time with friends was really important.
I have a similar one that I've had different grief buddies throughout this. And what was really important for me when I first lost my mom was leaning on the friends of mine who've also lost a parent, and having that support was huge. The other piece to that is to be able to have it was really important to me to have somebody, and you were one of these people that I could just text and say, it's a bad grief day, or the grief is really big today, or whatever it was. And being able to say that out loud and name it and have that just held with love was such a big piece of my healing. Is Definitely. Such a big piece of it.
Yeah, I think when we're in deep grief, it can feel like we need to hide ourselves away, or we can't show those authentic emotions. And actually, it's so important that we do let it out, that we find those authentic spaces and those authentic friendships where we can just name exactly where we're at and it's just met.
Yeah.
And I think if you're that friend for somebody, you don't even have to say much back. You can just hold it with that person. But I think we have to sort of test who we can share that stuff with so that we know that we have those people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What's your next one?
So it was really hard for me to run a business when I was deep in my grief.
You don't say.
So this is a two-parter.
Okay.
The first is that I was really glad that I had sort of built my business to run on its own. The way I built my business, I had done a lot of work on the front end. And then I was at a point where I had an incredible admin assistant, shout out Celeste, who could really take over for me when I didn't have a lot of energy. And having the business pieces running sort of on their own, or having a system for it, really allowed me to put all my energy towards meeting with clients because you can't fake meeting with clients. And it was really important to me that I was in a space where I was still cognizant enough to meet with clients and do my job well. The admin stuff is what really sucked a lot of energy. I was not as good about responding to emails. I described it as I felt like a ghost at the practice. Like I felt like I was really disappointed in my lack of support for my associates during that time. And I wished I had more energy. And I'm glad that I was saying no and not pushing myself when I didn't have the energy so that I could put my energy toward the clients. Now, the other piece is that being a business gal, I think we're denouncing boss babe now. I think people are denouncing it. So being a business gal, I would get these manic wins. Like I would get a little burst of manic energy, likely anxiety. And I would just be like, okay, well, we're doing goodie bags for South by Southwest and we're going to get branded materials and you guys are going to go pass them out at showcases. And so we would do like a marketing day and I had like earplugs and stickers and I had the associates pass them out at South by Southwest. So like knowing when you're having the dips and just letting yourself be in the dip and rest as much as you can, and then taking advantage of the manic wins. However, when they do blow, I remember there were a few times that I would screenshot an email that I had sent off, and I would say to you, did this sound bitchy or something like that? And you would say, oof, when I'm about to send out something like this, I usually run it by my admin first. So taking advantage of the manic wins when you can, but not letting them blow you away.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
That admin piece was so, shout out Sammy and Celeste and the rest of our teams that really picked up a lot of slack when we were.
A lot.
But yeah, I think that leaning on the supports that are available and saying yes when people ask if they can do something for you. I remember hearing this hack a while back, like having a little menu of things that people could do for you that would be helpful when you're really struggling. Give somebody something to do and it's something you've already approved of, etc. So that's an extra little hack that I'm tacking on to the admin piece.
I love that.
I also really loved when you saying no is one of my big hacks for grief. Going ahead and just saying no, knowing that I'll likely feel not up for it, and just going ahead and saying no really saved me all of that anxiety, that building anxiety of like, am I going to be okay for this? Am I going to have enough energy? How will they feel if I cancel last minute? I just went ahead and scrapped all of that and just said no to a lot of stuff.
I remember when we were both in the thick of things, and I was really glad that we were in it together and we had similar businesses because we could talk about this together and we fully got it. And we were talking about how we were disappointed with ourselves, feeling like we weren't able to put as much into our businesses as we once did. It felt very disorienting for me because I am such a hard worker and I do put so much into my business. And I remember saying to you, we're not the same people that we were before this happened. And so the people who built these businesses are not the same people that we are now. And we have a completely different energy for it. And I think about how grief changes you in so many ways. It literally changes your brain. It changes your nervous system. When you go through really intense grief, it really changes you. And that meant for us that it really changed our capacity. And it was getting to know what our new capacity was and what our new trajectory was. I feel like I'm finally finding my footing again. I'm finally finding my little hustle again and feeling good about doing business stuff and feeling excited about it. But for a long time, I couldn't think about any new projects or anything like that. It was just too much, and I just didn't have the capacity. And knowing that that was okay.
Yeah. I started crying just then because I got brought back to that moment. And what you said to me in that, when you said we're not the same people that we were when we started these group practices and built these group practices, was such validation of the reality that I was in that I wasn't quite facing. Like, I kept beating myself up and wondering, like, why can't I send a fucking email? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Like, there were the language I would use is that I was underwater. And there were so many times where I was sending an email saying, hey, I think I'm coming up for a little bit of air. Like, let's try to get a meeting going or whatever it may be with the team. There was through loss, there's such an identity change. And we are different. We are different people than we were before these losses and before these changes.
Yeah, even some pieces I never got back. Like, I kept trying to get back even until this very day, my spark for social media again, because social media was really how I marketed my business. And at the high point of it, I was getting a lot of speaking opportunities and I was having a lot of viral content. And then it didn't feel fun anymore. And it didn't feel like a creative outlet. And it didn't give me the same thing. I even posted a little reel today where I said, I'm just tired and I don't really like social media anymore. I don't think I'm going to do it. You can find me on this podcast because it feels better to do long form content rather than try to make these little social media posts that you never know what's going to happen with it.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to get all the nuance in a tiny little quick reel. It's hard. Okay. I guess kind of still in that same vein, writing has been one of my hacks, that to give everything that's churning in my brain and in my body a place to land has helped me move through a lot of stuff. And it's simple as like little notes in my phone. I've really loved the tactile pen to paper lately, but writing has just been a way for me to easily and fairly quickly release and move through and process.
That really makes me laugh about the Notes app, too. I agree. I will put pen to paper and do some notes in my phone. But then when I look, I see from our Valentine's Day dinner, once! Exclamation, 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 exclamation. Glenn Hansard, period. And then it's like random notes for episodes.
Of course, that's a universal experience, is having
manifest podcast guests.
Yeah.
Oh, my crush list, my physical crush list.
Absolutely.
Hot groceries. Anyway, the Notes app is a dark and gorgeous place.
Also, from a practical standpoint, we've said this several times about grief changing your brain, and my cognitive skills were shot, and my memory, I used to have such a solid memory, and that got wrecked in these last couple of years. And so writing things down has literally become so important for me because I can't remember shit anymore.
Yeah, that's very fair. I have a firm memory for things that I'm excited about.
Sure.
But not for things that I'm not excited about. So I keep my digital calendar, my paper calendar, and then the Notes app is usually for random things, and often these notes never get looked at again.
No. Oh, because they make no goddamn sense.
They make no goddamn sense.
No goddamn sense. What you got for us?
My next one, this, I wish I could remember the author. So this is not from me. But I always think about this. There was a meme a few years ago that was really for parents. And it said, we all hold so many balls in the air. Some of those balls are glass, and some of those balls are plastic. The plastic balls will bounce and not break if you drop them, but the glass balls will break. And so I have really been a ball balancer. I am just balancing balls. So I am pretty good at keeping my home straight, and I have my routine for getting chores done. For dishes, I listen to a podcast. That's my only podcast time, is when I do the dishes. For laundry, I can watch a TV show for folding. And then I keep baskets, like nice looking baskets, so I can throw toys that are left around in the baskets so that they're not out, and so I don't get overwhelmed with the sensory piece. And then there are things that I just really let go. For me, I like my home to be filled with play. And when we're able to play, it makes everybody feel safer. So I'm not really a hound on my kids for cleaning up, like while they're in the midst of playing or right after. Of course, they're not great about cleaning up in general, but we do our best, and we kind of keep things in their sectors so that it does look pretty fine and it's easy to put things away. And then I think a lot about the glass balls and the plastic balls for like time I spend with my kids and what's important to them, what will make an impact on them. Showing up for things makes a big impact on them. Anytime I can go to lunch with them, or I can do some sort of quality time thing with them, those are definitely glass balls. Or if I say that I'm going to do something with them, I have to make sure that I follow through and do it. The plastic balls, I had more plastic balls around work stuff. Things for clients were always glass balls. And I feel bad that things for associates sometimes became plastic balls, because people would be okay. As long as it wasn't urgent, people would be okay. And unfortunately, my notes became a plastic ball. And luckily, Simple Practice will remind you how many notes you have to do, and it's terrifying. And so after you have to do an ungodly amount of notes, you will not make that mistake again. When you see a large number in Simple Practice of the notes that you haven't gotten done, you won't let it be a plastic ball again.
I really love that language of plastic balls and glass balls. It helps really put things in perspective of we have limited time, we have limited energy. What matters?
Totally.
So for me, one of my huge grief healing hacks is my relationship with birds. And again, I really like these ones for me that are like checking a lot of boxes, especially because again, time and energy are limited when you're in it. And so really finding things that check a lot of boxes, meet a lot of needs feels important to me. So for me, being with the birds means being outside in nature, slowing down, and giving me a singular focus. So when I was really in the thick of it, even still now, I feel really overwhelmed with everything that's going on in the world, in our communities, and in my own experience. And so being able to pull my focus into something that is just right here, right now, right in front of me has been super, super helpful. And again, it's multisensory. There's the sight, there's the sound, there's the air and the temperature. And there's also, it's a new experience every time. There's so many little details to notice and delight in about birds. I remember I said to my dad not too long ago, or no, this was a while back. I was like, so other than like cardinals and blue jays, like most birds are just like brown and gray, right? And he looked at me like I was from another planet. He was like, no. And since then, like there are so many colorful birds and they're so beautiful. And I just crack up every time. Like, how are you this color? Like, how are you neon orange, little vermilion? Like, what's going on here? It's crazy. So finding something that is multisensory, that is familiar but different and changes, and something that like just brings delight. And something I liked what you said about your aerial silks, that you had no skin in the game. Like, I'm not, like, this isn't a competition in any way. This isn't something that brings up any anxiety for me. Just going and sitting outside and being with the birds is healing on so many levels.
I love that so much. And I will bounce off of that. I know that your self-care is more sitting and being. I schedule my self-care. So I came up with a self-care regimen and I've really stuck to it. Especially as a mom, we do not have a lot of time for self-care and we don't make it a priority usually. It's definitely something that becomes a plastic ball. When I was in the thick of things and I needed to be there for my kids and be there for my clients and run a business, I had to make self-care a glass ball. So I started doing my nail art.
Yeah, she did.
And so I keep up with my nails every 2 weeks. That's a big part of my self-care. I did the aerial silks. I have my personal trainer. Therapy every week. Group therapy. This summer, when I went through another rough patch, I got my schedule down, which I have the privilege to get my schedule down, luckily. But I literally made my schedule around going to Barton Springs. And I would go to Barton Springs as many days a week as I could. I did bring my laptop a few times, which is sacrilegious. But I would bring my laptop or a book and make sure I took an extensive dip in the water to regulate my nervous system, take in the sun, and I think it has a really nice social aspect of it too. You're not in isolation when you're at Barton Springs because of the community there. So the self-care makes sure that I uphold all the rest of my life responsibilities, and it helps me to show up for my kids and my clients. And I got to see that in a completely different way because I thought I was doing self-care before my intensive period of grief. But I now know I was not doing it to the extent that I needed. And I'm glad that even though I'm in a different phase with everything, I'm still keeping up on the intensive self-care.
Again, this conversation about like things moving from plastic balls to glass balls, that yeah, sometimes our self-care has to be a plastic ball because of whatever reason. And then sometimes it has to be a glass ball, and knowing when it's changing and moving with that is huge. Huge, huge, huge. Okay. I am going to add that one of my healing hacks in grief is dancing. So this one again it checks a lot of boxes. I like to dance alone when I'm cooking, and I really love to dance in the safety of our homes, and also out in community. I also really love to shake my ass out somewhere.
Really? Because I haven't been able to get you there.
I know. So
would love to.
But dancing has been so cathartic in an uninhibited way. Let my body move as it feels it needs to move in that moment.
Yeah.
That's just been crazy healing. How many more do you have?
I'm out.
You're fresh out?
How about you?
I was just going to add that we've both found animals to be a bit of a healing hack in our grief. I know that you got yourself some divorce dogs, and I got myself a kitty and chickens, and having things to tend to, again, kind of similar as gardening, having little critters to tend to, and also like the science behind, our oxytocin when we snuggle an animal, huge. So if you can, add some animals to your life.
Yeah, I knew that one of my dogs was going to not make it much longer. And so I wanted to get a dog to train her while she was still, or a dog for her to train while she was still alive. But after she passed away, I got a second dog. And there's a beautiful book on grief by Martin Prechtel called The Smell of Rain on Dust. And in that book, Prechtel talks about how animals can help us through grief. There's a piece of it that's a little fucked that makes me feel bad. But he says, usually when a pet passes away, we replace that pet. And so that new pet holds all our grief for the pet that passed away, which does make me feel bad. And he said that's why animals don't live very long. Because when they get sick, it's from our grief.
Jesus.
So that's tougher to hear.
Jesus.
He's reading us for filth.
Mm-hmm.
And he does have some beautiful insight about how healing pets can be within grief. Even thinking about placing your hand on your pet and allowing your pet to help you regulate your nervous system. My dogs sleep with me every night, so I don't have to sleep alone. There's just something really beautiful about the way that they care for us as much as we care for them.
Yeah. The chickens helped me so much with my nervous system through, like, they're erratic and it spikes my anxiety. And so working to breathe through every time I'm with them. Same with my cat. Like, she's a little crazy, and it can like heighten my anxiety a bit. And so noticing that and breathing through it and working myself back down has been really, like, I just feel like, I'm co-regulating with these little critters, and I love it.
I love it. Well, I think that's a wrap on our healing hacks. Thank you for listening, and we'll heal together soon.
Bye.
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 Thank you so much for joining us. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and consider leaving a review. If you have already, thank you. You can find us on all socials at The Healing Journey. You can find us online at www.thehealingjourney.com, and you can shoot us an email at thehealingjourney@gmail.com. Talk soon.